Hello, welcome back to Just Shae and Friends, where I talk about autism, motherhood, and what truly supports our kids. Today, we're going to dive into detoxes and cleanses for autistic children. Why I chose not to do one for Stacy, what research tells us, and how I believe we should shift our conversation from fixing to supporting. People often ask why I never tried a detox or a cleanse for Stacy. I usually don't answer because I hadn't fully thought it through what I believed at the time. But when I reflect, it comes down to this. It sounded like something that might help, yeah, but I wasn't confident it was the right answer for us, especially after seeing many solutions over the years that didn't hold up under scrutiny. So I held back. When we're talking about the word detox, I am specifically referring to the approaches that aim to remove heavy metals or toxins from the body, especially those treatments that have gained attention in the autism community space. Some parents share their stories of their children beginning to talk or show new skills afterward. I heard one mom said, their kid had meltdowns every single day, and then after the detox, they didn't have one single meltdown. I heard another parent say that their son didn't talk for years, almost 10 or 11 years, and they did the treatment and he suddenly had verbal language. And, the list goes on and on. And it's important to note that improving skills can happen for many reasons: therapy, environment, maturation. The challenge is determining whether the detox itself is the cause of the new skills. And that's kind of where it gets tricky for a lot of us because basically and y'all, are going off the word of other people that we probably don't know, i.e., seeing it on social media or reading about it, seeing it on the news, whatever the case may be, but we don't know for sure, is my point. Now, because I know that some of my listeners may be unfamiliar with the autism detox that I'm referring to, and I also, I'm not going to lie, I didn't have a lot of information about the detox situation. I knew some about it, and then I did a small little research session years ago when I initially heard about it, but nothing to this extent. I went into more detail in the research today, and so we're going to talk about the autism detox conversation and understanding it. Over the last several years, detox and cleanse regimens have been circulating on social media and in some parent communities as possible ways to support autistic children. These programs often include herbal supplements, clay or chlorella powders, heavy metal detox smoothies, or specific diet protocols. Some parents describe them as gentle ways to flush the toxins or to balance the gut, while others believe they can improve autism traits, speech, or behavior. Many of the claims suggest that removing the toxins help the brain reset. Now, from the information that I have gathered, some of the social media approaches involve relatively low risk nutrition changes, and I think that might not be a big deal. But others that I have seen and researched are borrowing language and ideas from a medical procedure called chelation therapy. And that is, my friend, where it gets complicated. So let's talk about where the detox idea came from. Chelation therapy is a legitimate medical treatment used to remove heavy metals like lead or arsenic from the bloodstream after poisoning. It involves binding agents that pull metals from the body through urine. And this became a thing in the early 2000s when some researchers and practitioners they began suggesting that heavy metals might be playing a role in autism and that chelation could help by removing them. This idea got very popular in some communities, and then it eventually trickled into non medical detox programs that echo the same logic. Removing toxins to improve autistic traits, but using unregulated supplements or homemade mixtures instead of prescription agents. So, in my opinion, basically the same thing as the medical treatment. It's just you don't have to go to a doctor. All right. So now that we know what the detoxes from social media that we're talking about are, I'm not naming any, but now that we know what we're talking about there, and now that we know what chelation is, let's talk about the research. Okay. Because like I said, the social media cleanses, detoxes, it came from the idea, most of them came from the idea of the chelation therapy, which, like I said, is a medical treatment. Now, let's look at what the research says. First off, I'd like to say I'm going to put all the sources that I grabbed this information from in the description. Go check it out for your own use. And I implore you also to do your own research after this, especially if you're considering doing it. And then I also want to say I'm not judging anybody that does this. This podcast episode is purely based off of my wanting to know what it's about. And then I posted something on Facebook asking my group, did they know anything about it? And a lot of people showed interest in the topic, but were like me and didn't really know that much about it. So that's why I'm doing this. Okay. I'm not pointing no fingers. I'm not saying nobody's bad for doing anything. I'm not saying nobody's bad for not doing it. This is just purely factual, which is why I'm going to have all these resources in the description for y'all to review. So, what does the research say? The first thing I found was a systematic review that was published by the National Institutes of Health. They found, and this is a quote, currently no clinical trial evidence suggests that pharmaceutical chelation is an effective intervention for ASD, meaning autism spectrum disorder. Given prior reports of serious adverse events, that part got me right there. Serious adverse events. You said what? Because like I said, I've heard of the detoxes and all that, but I didn't know all what it entailed. And this, when I was looking up this, that was the first time I've heard of adverse events. Now, but I digress. Where was I? Given prior reports of serious adverse events such as hypocalcemia, Claude, I'm not a doctor, okay? But let me look this up actually, so I don't look crazy. Given prior reports of serious adverse events such as hypocalcemia, which is low calcium, basically, renal impairment, and reported death. The risk of using pharmaceutical chelating agents for ASD currently outweigh proven benefits. I don't know about y'all, but that's kind of all I needed to hear about the chelation, anyways. Also, I found a review, the Cochrane or Cochrane review. Okay, look in the description. Okay, you click the links, they in there. But anyways, they reached the same conclusion, basically stating that no reliable evidence shows benefits and that potential harms outweigh the possible effects. And it's possible effects also. Like I said earlier, we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. So that right there to me is too much what if for me. I mean, I'm an overthinker. When I first heard about it and did my research, I would have myself so long. I would have myself right into anxiety. And I overthink it way too much because there's too many possible outcomes. Like, I don't know. I don't like not knowing. That's me. I don't like not knowing. And the FDA had to go ahead and say what they had to say. I found the consumer update or report, or rather review, whatever the FDA be putting out. I found it. Okay. They also warned consumers about therapies or supplements marketed as autism cures, including those claiming to detox metals, saying such products are unapproved and may cause serious side effects. FDA Consumer Report. I don't know about y'all, but for me, credible source. It's in the description. I mean, it's in there. And look it up. And then the NHS, they emphasize that autism is not an illness and cannot be cured. And I agree. Listing chelation and detox therapies among treatments not recommended for autism, not recommended. And that's from the NHS. Let's see who they are because I already forgot. My memory is terrible. And I didn't put no notes. So the NHS is a national health service, basically. So, credible source, in my opinion. But like I said, you don't have to take my word for it. Look them up, yourself. I did all the legwork for you guys. All you guys have to, you can believe me or no, and you can also look up at these resources. Now, let's compare the two: chelation therapy and social media detox. And like I said, I'm going to keep saying social media detox because I don't want to pinpoint any one, because I feel like there are several in supplements and etc. that say or claim that they get rid of autistic traits or that they're autism cures or stuff like that. I'm going to keep saying social media detox because I don't want to name them. All right. So, but like I was saying, let's compare the two. To the chelation, the medical treatment that we learned about, where all this stemmed from, because that's important. Because where did the social media detox and all those ideas come from? Chelation. Okay? So let's compare. Chelation therapy is a prescription medical procedure performed under supervision for cases of actual heavy metal poisoning. That's what it's for. The social media detoxes are usually over the counter or homemade routines using supplements, herbs, or restrictive diets that claim to remove toxins or metals from the body. Chelation and the social media detoxes have shared claims. They both suggest that removing metals or toxins will lessen autism traits. Both suggest this. Evidence, unfortunately, neither approach has scientific proof that it changes autism traits. And the reason why I say unfortunately is because that's usually what does it for me. Like, I'm a science person. When it comes to this kind of stuff, like I'm a science person and I would like scientific proof if there is it. That's why I do this research. I want to see what the scientists be saying about it. But like I said, neither approach has any scientific proof that it changes. You basically have to go off the word of others. And for me, I don't like that. And that goes for a lot of things. I've never been I go off your word type of person. I need some proof, or I need to experience it, or something. I need evidence. I'm sorry I have to be like that, but it's gotten me this far in life. Okay. So I'm gonna keep doing it. I think it's protecting me. I don't know. I digress. Okay, evidence, there isn't any. Risk level, chelation carries documented medical risks, such as kidney injury and electrolyte imbalance. I don't want that. I don't know about you, but I don't. I don't want that for my kid either. The social media detoxes, it varies by ingredients, the risk level. Some are harmless, probably. Others might interfere with medications, digestion, and nutrition. And this is going to be an issue because our kids are autistic. So they probably already have issues with food that are causing their digestion and nutrition, the nutrients they get, and all of that stuff that's causing it to be out of whack in the first place. And then if your autistic child has something else like ADHD that they need to take medications for, you have to consider that. Or any other medications that they're taking, you have to consider that the detox might interact with that. And at the time that I first heard about the detoxes, Stacy was on medication, which I will talk about later. But let's go ahead and move on. Let's talk about why balancing hope and science matters. When parents hear success stories, it's natural to feel curious or hopeful. There's nothing wrong with that. That hope is not misplaced. It's valid, okay? It comes from wanting your child to thrive. We want them to do well. But it's important to know that so far, there's no credible evidence that removing toxins changes autism itself. There's none. If somebody is telling you different, look, it's up to you if you want to believe them or not. But it is what it is. The research is what it is, okay? The real benefit may come from improved nutrition or lifestyle changes, not from detoxing the body. Getting the balance right protects your child's health, family resources, and trust in legitimate care. That's why it helps to look for well designed studies and official guidance before trying any of these products or protocols that are marketed as a cure or a detox. My opinion only, okay? But facts. You know what I'm saying? Now, let's talk about my experiences here with diet and food change. Hearing all that research, it doesn't mean that I've written off every health related approach, though. I still believe that our choices around food and environment can really make a difference. Nutrition and overall health can influence behavior, mood, and energy levels. And there's research to support that connection. And of course, I'm about to give it to y'all once again. All these links, anything you need about this research will be in the description. But I did the legwork for you. I'm going to read. Read on, Shay. I found a scientific review that examined the eating habits and the nutrition of children with autism. It found that many children with ASD have selective diets higher in processed foods and lower in fruits and vegetables, which can impact behavior and overall health. Basically, what I just said. Some of what our kids are eating could quite possibly be causing them to have stomach problems and all that already, and it's going to affect their mood, energy levels, and behavior, etc. Another study showed that lowering ultra processed food intake, am I talking to anybody right now? Can improve overall well being in children with autism or ADHD. Now, I know sometimes we just can't help it because fed is best. So if your kids, all their safe foods are processed food, look, I know you're doing the best you can. I definitely have been there. But study. Having a diet that's high in processed food, it could really impact behavior, and things of that nature can really exacerbate some autism traits, basically meaning it could make it worse, basically. Could. And like I said, it affects behavior, mood levels, energy levels, all the levels, okay? It affects that. And especially with people with autism or ADHD. In my son's case, we actually did try that route, the changing and cleaning up his diet route. It wasn't anything extreme because, first of all, it was hard in the first place. His safe foods were his safe foods, and he was not going for me changing anything. I had to do it gradually, and we had to do a lot of food therapy and have him. That's another story for another time. But, anyways, we, I, because I'm saying we like he did something. I guess he tolerated it, but then again, he didn't tolerate it. I digress. I removed gluten for several years, I don't know how many, and cut back on sugar and processed foods. The change, I'm telling y'all, it was noticeable. After a while of him having just that clean diet, low sugars, low processed foods, it was really more of a on a rewarding basics that I allowed him to like have a cheat day or something like that. It was like if he, had a really good week at school, cheat day, McDonald's, whatever the case may be. That's gluten and processed and sugar, and it probably got, I don't know, all the other stuff that we can't pronounce in it. But anyways, my point is, after a while of that, consistently, the change was noticeable. He had fewer meltdowns, less aggression, and he was calmer and had more focused energy, kind of like. And let's talk about the meltdowns for a minute. And the reason why I say that the change was noticeable, because before I changed his diet, he was having an explosive, aggressive meltdown, at least one or two or three a day. He was putting holes in the wall, he was breaking things, he was throwing things to break them on purpose. He wasn't so much the violent against people type of kid, but he would break things. So after a while of the diet change, that went down to maybe two or three meltdowns a week. And for me, that's noticeable. And just him being calmer altogether was like, that felt something was changed to me, because Stacy is autistic, has ADHD. And when I say ADHD, he put the hyper and hyperactivity. Okay. Bro was all over the place. I could not keep up with him. And he couldn't even sit for longer than 2 to 3 seconds without getting up, fidgeting, pacing, running around, standing on his head. Y'all know what I'm talking about. They can't sit still. And then after I did this removing gluten, I noticed that he was just much calmer. Now he was still kind of hyperactive, but it was a normal amount. It wasn't it wasn't a great amount where that I could say he never sit down. After, just a normal amount of hyper when he get excited or anything like that. But it wasn't all the time. He was calm. I'm trying to tell you. He was calm. He even kind of stopped running around, which later on that kind of bit me in the behind, because that's when he started gaining a little bit weight. But we'll talk. That's another topic for another podcast episode. But very noticeable change. And in that same year that I changed his diet under supervision. Now, I'm not saying don't just do what I do and willy nilly. This was under supervision. In the same year, under supervision, I decided to stop his ADHD medication that he was taking. And he handled the transition so smoothly. So it was so smooth. Before clonidine, which is the ADHD medication that he was on, no opinions about that medication for the moment. No opinions about it for the moment. Again, that's a episode for another time. But it helped him for only short, like, stretches of time. And I feel like that's kind of the way medication works, anyways. Like, once it wears off, the old patterns of hyperactivity came right back, right back. But after the dietary changes and taking him off the ADHD medication, he wasn't only calm for short amounts of time while the medication was in him. You know what I mean? It was natural. He had natural, calm energy. Unless, like I said, he got excited about something or, naturally. But yes, for us, me and Stacy and I, dietary changes supported him in a steady and realistic way. And it wasn't a cure. He's still autistic. And it was a support system that helped his body and mind function better. Improved his behavior, improved his mood, improved his energy. Now, let's talk about the support versus the fix narrative. Now, there is a narrative out there that frames autism as something that must be fixed. I don't like this for us. I chose a different route, supporting Stacy. He's doing well. He isn't broken. He's different, yeah, but in a set of ways that require understanding and not erasure, meaning not trying to just get rid of his autism. Again, I don't judge other parents for making different choices. Never that. Never. Everyone's journey is unique. And y'all know what I always say. I don't live there. Okay. I don't live in their house. So how could I ever judge? I'm not doing that. Okay. But sometimes I do feel a little guilt for not trying a detox. But then I remind myself that Stacy, he's thriving now. And trying to introduce something that he doesn't want or isn't ready for would not be in his or my best interest. And it's not in his best interest, and it's not in my best interest because it's not in his best interest, if you see what I'm saying. Because he's in charge ultimately when it comes to, what he gonna take in and ingest, unless it's his diet and he over there doing way too much with the too much. You know what I mean. But as far as a detox or something like that, yeah, I just don't think it's in his best interest. It's not in his best interest. It's not on his priority list. It's not on mine. And side note, it took me 3 whole years. I might tell y'all a joke, but I would never lie to y'all. It took me 3 whole years to help him tolerate just taking a cold medicine with the little drinkable one. Y'all don't even want to know how long it took me to get him to learn how to take pills or just to even tolerate, not learn, but to tolerate taking medicine in the first place. Okay? That teaches me right there that forcing treatments is not the same as supporting him in my eyeballs. Now, let's talk about the blame narrative. This part of our conversation is about how society is framing autism. The medium often covers autism in a way that suggests someone is to blame. Frequently, guess who blame it? Well, not guess who blame it, guess who they blame it. Okay? Frequently mothers. They're blaming the mothers, women. There are recent pieces suggesting that taking acetaminophen, Tylenol, y'all know what I'm talking about, during pregnancy might cause autism. That right there is mirroring the older theories like the refrigerator mother concept from the 1940s, which has been long disproved. But the pattern persists. My mom used to say, ain't nothing new under the sun, or was that grandma? I don't know. It was granny or mother used to say nothing new under the sun. And she right, you right. It's a pattern. The pattern persists. Mothers are asked, what did you do? Or what didn't you do? And autism becomes something that they caused. Sadly. Okay? These narratives move the focus away from acceptance and support, though, and it moves it towards guilt and prevention. I don't like that for us either. They make parents re examine every choice that they ever made and increase the stigma by treating autism as a tragedy caused by action or inaction. Meanwhile, we're over here losing sight of and energy from what really matters: communication, inclusion, and support. These should be our priorities. Okay? Not what caused, because you can go back and forth for centuries about what caused and might never find the cause. But guess what? You can do. You can communicate, include, and support and accept. Okay? Autistic people are out here. Let's talk about that. We out here. So now let's accept and work on inclusion and support. Let's shift the narrative. Let's move from what did I do wrong to how can I support? From how can I fix this to how can I empower? Autism doesn't need a cure. It needs care, understanding, and respect. Real support comes from consistent, healthy choices: nutrition, routines, sensory regulation, communication tools, and community. When the voices of those most affected are front and center, our approach becomes less about shame and more about truth and inclusion. In closing, I didn't do a detox for Stacy, not because I thought it was always wrong, but because for us, it didn't feel right. I chose support over speculation. There wasn't enough information to point in evidence to point in the direction to convince me to do it. So I did it, and I'm not going to. But what I am going to do, and what I did, and what I'm going to continue to do, is focus on what I can handle: cleaner foods, better habits, consistency, and love. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with somebody who may benefit. And remember, be kind to yourself, trust your instinct, and support your child's brilliance. Have a good day. Bye.